Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you again. Clearly, you should never listen to me on anything gambling related except for college football ever again. Isn't it just awesome that I was right about pretty much every college football game today, barring, I guess, Ohio completely imploding late in the game after they were up 27-7 or whatever. Besides that, I mean, I was right about Florida. I was close to betting that one. That didn't actually happen. I was right about Notre Dame. I mean, what do you want me to do, man? College football has killed it for me this year. I just did the Action Network, they do like a Spotify Wrapped type of thing. It's the degenerate version of the Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. It tells you how you did this year, and I don't even understand how I'm having a losing year. Like, it was like, you were up in college football. You were up in baseball. I'm like, how was I up in baseball? I thought I did terribly in baseball. No, I was actually up in baseball. So I'm like, what did I even lose in? How am I having a losing year? I think I was still slightly up in the NBA. So I guess it was college basketball has been a disaster, obviously, but I thought college basketball was at least good on the first half of the year. So I don't even understand it, man. And NFL, maybe? Has NFL really been that bad? Maybe. I mean, I thought NFL was not as bad, but maybe I'm wrong. Nate, what's up, man? So I don't get it. I mean, obviously, I knew college football was awesome. I don't think NBA has been that bad. I was 0-2 today, and what can you do? I fell victim to just a ridiculous shooting outlier again in that Siena game. Holy Cross, I think, shot like 50% from three, maybe even more than that. I don't understand it. It's not sustainable. I don't know how they did that for another game in a row. Holy Cross, they suck. I mean, it's not going to happen again. I mean, I don't understand how it happened in this game, and then I lost on the Miami Heat. I mean, that one didn't get there. The Heat were winning the game in the third quarter. So it's not like they were out of it, and they were still kind of in range to make a late run to try to get that win, and didn't happen. I'm going to talk about NFL, and I have two plays in the NFL. I mean, I know I'm already 0-1 yet again in the NFL with that under on Thursday. It was a piece of shit. So maybe I should just stop playing totals as well. I'm resigned to the fact that I'm not going to have a winning year here unless I make a massive run in the next 9 days or whatever, 10 days to somehow overcome that, which is possible, but I don't think it's going to happen. I would have to win like $2,500 or something. Jack, you're starting the tower off. All right, let's get to the games. We got two Saturday games. I'm going to talk about every game on the board, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, some of these games are absolute junk that I don't have any opinion on at all. So we already had Denver and Chargers, as we know. Tomorrow, we actually have two games. The Saturday NFL starts. The first game is on NBC and also Peacock. Kansas City continues to draw these Peacock games, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Actually, no. I was thinking of the Amazon Prime one that they were on a Black Friday. I don't fucking know, man. I mean, what do we have going on in this game? This is Houston at Kansas City. What we have seen in this game is this line moved all over the place. So the Chiefs opened as a 4-point favorite. Then it looked like Pat Mahomes was not going to be playing. So the line shifted all the way to Houston -2. Then it was announced that Patrick Mahomes is not only playing, but he's not even questionable. He's definitely playing. So now the line has moved all the way back to the Chiefs, almost to where it started, sitting at 3.5, I guess, just because there's maybe slight uncertainty about the Mahomes injury still. And I'm thinking, is this going to be a repeat of 2 years ago? 2 years ago, if you were following me, I don't know. I don't think I was doing better off dead yet then, but I bet on the Chiefs during that playoff run, the year that they beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Mahomes was playing with an injured ankle, and every week it was like, Mahomes is injured. The Chiefs aren't going to win. And I'm like, you're overreacting to this. Like, they're going to win. I think I bet the Chiefs 3 straight games that year and just got win after win. It's like, all right, I'll just take it. If you're going to undervalue the Chiefs, maybe that's happening again here, but also I don't think the Chiefs are necessarily the same team this year. As we know, the Chiefs, they basically can't win by margin, even though I know I said that against Cleveland, and they finally actually did. But it looks like Houston is kind of a public underdog in this one, man. 58% of tickets, 55% of the cash on Houston. So, I mean, should I actually say that I actually lean to the Chiefs? I don't think I can actually say that because Houston is at least kind of still in a fight to try to get into the playoffs. So, I mean, they do have padding in their division, though. So you are looking at two teams that actually do have a decent amount of padding and that are highly unlikely to miss the playoffs here. So maybe this game, I don't know, man. It's all really going to depend on who you think is going to show up in this game. And maybe because it's one of these weird, isolated Saturday games that both teams know that the other team is a potential playoff opponent and both teams are good. Maybe that means both teams will actually show up for this game. I don't know, because Houston with another win last week and Indianapolis losing. Mike Holtz, the Houston Texans, I mean, they have the tiebreaker against Indy too. So I think that means they've clinched the division, right? Because even if Indy winds up in a tie with them, Houston would still beat them with the tiebreaker, having beaten them twice. So Houston, I believe, has the division wrapped up already, but they're going to Arrowhead for an isolated game. So probably Houston is still going to show up for this. Kansas City, we know Mahomes is playing, but is Mahomes 100%? Who knows? Kansas City, I mean, they really are in pretty good shape right now. I mean, I think, are they 2 games ahead of Buffalo now or 1 game? I don't know, but they're ahead of Buffalo right now. Both teams are still kind of vying for the 1 seed here, though. So it is still possible for Kansas City to lose the 1 seed, but is that alone enough of a motivator? I don't really know. I mean, what we can say is that Kansas City is undefeated at home, but they have had multiple home games where they barely escaped against the Chargers, against the Raiders, against Denver. So a lot of these teams have played them pretty close at Arrowhead, man. So Kansas City, they have not had a lot of big, and they won by 1 against Cincinnati at home. So they've had a lot of small winning margins at home. This is a tough game to gauge here, man. I don't know what to think about it. If I was going to play this game, I would probably look to play the under, but it has gone down to 44.5, down to 42, 59% of the tickets and cash, both on the over here. I think the under makes sense in this one. I mean, even though I think the hype is kind of gone on this Texans offense because we've seen like a full season where the Texans just haven't really done anything offensively. But the Texans, I mean, yeah, their offense not really that good anymore. I mean, I think the league has figured out what they're doing with Stroud and whatever. The Chiefs also have struggled pretty badly offensively. And now you got Mahomes, who is probably not 100% coming into this game. They are getting Hollywood Brown back this week for the Chiefs, but how much is he even going to play? Does that even matter? Is he going to be like their number 3 wide receiver? Who knows? Because they do have DeAndre Hopkins there now. So to me, this looks like the makings of a defensive battle, man. I mean, both of these teams are better defensively than offensively. So the under makes sense to me in this game. Yeah, the NFL is going up against college football playoffs. That's true. I will talk about more college football playoffs tomorrow. And I have to talk about college basketball too. I'm going to have to get up and do a lot of work, man, because I'm not going to do college basketball tonight yet because I'm doing NFL tonight. What's up, Justin? How insane Mahomes is, versus the entire idea of football? What do you mean exactly? I don't know. I mean, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, obviously. I don't know if I'm ready to, like, hail him as, like, one of the best quarterbacks ever. I mean, as far as, like, his Super Bowl winning track record, I mean, he is up there. So I will give him that. He makes crazy like sidearm throws. I mean, yeah, I mean he's good. I still think he's a bit overhyped. This season he hasn't really been as good though. Really, I mean this whole Chiefs offense is really kind of struggling a bit, and to me it just seems like the Chiefs it's just escape after escape, and to me it seems like they're gonna at some point get knocked out this year. The next game up is a really good game, actually. Steelers and Ravens. This is one of the best games of the week. This game is tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern in Baltimore. Ravens are up from 5 to, it looks like, teetering on 7 here. I've seen mostly 6.5s out there for most of the week. And I do like the Ravens side in this one. So if you do like the Ravens side, you want to lay less than 7, obviously. You want to try to lay the 6.5. Ravens look like they're a little bit public with 63% of tickets, but 72% of the cash coming in on the Ravens. So to me, I don't know if that ticket percentage is really totally accurate, because to me, you see the Ravens have more of the cash percentage on them. The fact that the Steelers have the better record. The Steelers already beat the Ravens once, even though it was in Pittsburgh. And everybody's just going to look at this and think, yeah, this is a super competitive game. The whole thing about Steelers-Ravens is every game is a 3-point game between these two teams. It's such a crazy rivalry, etc., whatever. But I don't know, man. I think times have changed, and I would lean to laying the points with the Ravens. I think everything that I just said is actually going to have the public thinking that there's value in taking the Steelers, just like they thought last week against the Eagles, and that wasn't the case. I like the Ravens in this game. I mean, yeah, Pittsburgh did beat them once, but what that's going to do is that means Pittsburgh is one game ahead of Baltimore in the division. But if Baltimore loses this game to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh has the division pretty much, man, because that's going to give Pittsburgh the tiebreaker. So effectively, Pittsburgh will be ahead 3 games, whereas if Baltimore wins this game, they'll be tied. So there's a huge discrepancy in the 2 possible outcomes here. And I think Baltimore is going to be the team that's a little bit more motivated because of that. Because they are the team that's slightly behind. And of course, they're at home and they're the favorite. Even though I know it means the pressure is on, I don't necessarily like to lay points with a team where you know the pressure is going to be on. But I do lean to the Baltimore side. And Pittsburgh, kind of like what I said last week, man. I mean, Pittsburgh, they've faced a pretty weak schedule this year. I mean, I don't want to take that much away from Pittsburgh. I mean, their defense has definitely been good. I think their offense tends to struggle at times. And they're not the better team here. I mean, the odds makers are telling you Baltimore's the better team, laying almost a touchdown at home. When the teams faced off before, Baltimore's a 3-point road favorite at Pittsburgh. So that indicates that this line maybe is actually a little bit short at below a touchdown for Baltimore here. And I know Pittsburgh won that game, but Baltimore was -2 in turnovers in the game. Baltimore, I believe, outgained Pittsburgh in this game on the road. Yeah, they did. And Baltimore had 3 turnovers. They're -2 in turnovers. Pittsburgh did outpossess them, though. But then still, the game came down to Baltimore attempting a 2-point conversion, which would have sent the game to overtime, basically, and that failed. And that was the end of the game. Pittsburgh, I know they did get into scoring range a lot, and they kicked a bunch of field goals, but a couple of them were really far out from Boswell, my fantasy kicker. He had 3 field goals of 50 or more yards in this game. So it's not like Pittsburgh was really like driving, having like a lot of sustained drives all the way down to the red zone in this one. So I don't know. I think the final score here maybe was a little bit misleading, although what I will say is that Mike Tomlin and Pittsburgh's defense, they do actually do really well against Lamar Jackson. Like, they have Lamar Jackson figured out. They know how to scheme against him. But the Ravens do have other weapons on offense, man. I mean, they have a good rushing attack. They have Derrick Henry. It's not like Lamar Jackson is going to have to come out there and do everything. And again, this is going to be like a situation where it's in-season revenge for the Ravens, even though the Ravens are the home team here. So it would be revenge for losing on the road in this case. Or I think if you lost at home, the revenge scenario is a little bit more of a motivator. But both teams are going to be motivated here, man. I mean, this is basically, they're playing for the division right now. So it is a huge game. I mean, both teams are highly likely to make the playoffs regardless of the outcome, but these teams want the division. They want the higher seeding as well, but obviously these teams want to beat each other anyway, because this is Pittsburgh, Baltimore here, man. But again, yeah, I mean, for all those reasons, I do actually like the Ravens here. Steelers, I mean, they're coming off that tough game against Philadelphia. So Steelers faced a really physical defense last week, whereas the Ravens absolutely did not. The Ravens actually came out of a bye, and then all they did was go to the New York Giants and beat the Giants. So the Ravens have to be the more rested team here, man. They had a much easier game last week than Pittsburgh did, and they had the bye going into that game. So the Ravens are coming into this game as the more well-rested team as well. So for that reason, I also like the Ravens here. And I also like the over in this game. I know the total is down from 46.5 to 44.5, juice to the over. We see 62% of the tickets and 74% of the cash on the over. My lean would be to the over in this one. The previous game that these two teams played, as we saw, was 18-16 was the final. So that looked like a pretty low-scoring game. And even though I did say that, well, the Steelers weren't exactly like getting into the red zone a lot, as they were kicking a lot of field goals from way far out. But still, I mean, the Steelers were still scoring a lot, and they actually scored no touchdowns in that game. They scored all field goals. So Baltimore actually had 2 touchdowns, and the Steelers didn't have any, and the Steelers still won the game. So that's kind of a weird statistical outlier there too. And I think the Steelers actually did that in the first game of the year too, against the Falcons. I think the Falcons had 2 or 3 touchdowns against them. The Steelers didn't have any, and the Steelers still won on all field goals. And that game was 18 to something. I don't even remember what it was. But the Steelers have won multiple games this year without scoring a touchdown. That's just, their defense is good. But man, I mean, I don't really see their defense completely holding this Baltimore offense down, man. Baltimore's offense is quite good. And this is not the same Baltimore defense that we're accustomed to in the past, even the one from last year with Mike McDonald there and whatever. Ravens defense is significantly worse this year than it was last year. I'm not going to say it's bad, but they are a vulnerable defense. So I think that kind of makes this game look like it could go over this total as well, because you're going to have the Ravens potentially being able to put up points here because their offense is so potent. I don't really even think the Steelers defense is going to completely hold them down, even though they do have a good track record against Lamar Jackson. And on the other side, the Ravens, I think, like I said, their defense can be scored on, so the Steelers may be able to put up some points themselves as well. And if it's a higher scoring game, that does actually lend itself more towards a favorite being able to win the game by margin as well. So for that reason, I like the Ravens as well a little bit. The Ravens do have the significantly more potent of these two offenses. I know the Steelers are the better defense getting points, so more often than not, I would wind up looking that way to the team that has the better defense if they're an underdog. But in this game, that is not the case. So I like the Ravens and the over in that one. Moving on to Sunday. Both of my plays are on Sunday. We have Browns, Bengals. This game is interesting because, well, I guess because of two things. The Bengals still are not, they're not dead. They're still fighting for a playoff spot. The Bengals have won a couple of games in a row. They got completely lucky in that Monday night game, winning the game because they had a punt blocked, because Dallas couldn't help themselves and had a rookie player get in the way of a blocked punt that was going to win the game for Dallas. Essentially, Dallas had to go screw it up and touch the ball and give it back to Cincinnati. Cincinnati won the game. Cincinnati played a second straight road game last week at Tennessee. Tennessee pulled Will Levis. Just bad times in Tennessee. They're just sucking ass. Cincinnati wound up winning that game, and now Cincinnati gets Cleveland. Cincinnati did already win at Cleveland. So we do have this one angle that says that it is in-season road revenge for Cleveland here. And like I said, that is a decent angle to look at a lot of times. So that would have you looking to take the points with the Cleveland Browns in this one, but I just don't see it in this one, man. I would not want to try to take the points with the Browns in this one. Browns, I know they're going to show up, even though they're a dead team. They will show up to try to play spoiler against a division rival, especially their in-state rival in Cincinnati. So I do think Cleveland will show up because they do want to spoil the party here. But Cincinnati, they're playing for their lives here. But again, that does mean the pressure is on. So do you want to lay points with Cincinnati when they're in a huge pressure situation and they need to win? I don't really want to do that either. So I'm just going to stay away. But Cincinnati, we know their offense can score. It's just a matter of their defense. Is their defense going to be able to do enough to allow them to win this game by margin? Excuse me. And I think maybe they will, actually, because in this game, Cleveland is benching Jameis Winston, man. It's just a sad situation because Winston came in and he seemed to spark the offense, man. It seemed like Winston was maybe going to help turn this Cleveland Browns team around a little bit. I know it didn't translate into that many wins. They got one win, but what can you expect when your team isn't really that good? But Jameis Winston, just because he throws a ton of interceptions, just like always, he only got a shot of a few games, and now they're taking him out again. And really, does Cleveland really think they're going to be better off with Dorian Thompson-Robinson than Jameis Winston? No. Jameis Winston is the way more talented quarterback. He has the way better arm. The problem is he just is very mistake prone. I don't think it's going to be at all an upgrade for Cleveland to be going to DTR in this game. So I really don't like that either. So that's another reason why I just don't want to come in and try to take the points with Cleveland in this one at all. I'm not necessarily saying I would lean to Cincinnati's side either, but maybe I do. They're up from 6-9. So obviously you're not getting the best of it. Because the line at one point was below a touchdown, but I think that was because of the quarterback change, I think. So the odds makers are even telling you that this is a downgrade in quarterback. I think that's why the line moved as much as it did through that key number of 7 and 7.5. I think it's because, in the books probably had to get it up to 9 to kill teasers and whatever, because they know 8.5 is going to get teased down to 2.5. So the books wanted to eliminate that possibility. But the books are still telling you Jameis Winston is better than DTR. DTR comes in and the line moves 3 more points on the Bengals. So, it's a bad situation. I do think it's a quarterback downgrade. Bengals are going to be public because no public bettor is going to come in and want to try to take the Browns, especially with Winston not in there. 81% of the tickets, 96% of the cash On the Cincinnati Bengals side, I don't want to play that side either, though. Like I said, I mean, the pressure is on for them, but it would not surprise me at all if Cincinnati was able to run away with this game with DTR in there. And Cleveland's defense looks like they're kind of getting gassed a little bit. I mean, Myles Garrett has been playing kind of injured for a couple of games. Like, there was a game where he was just like, I think the game against Pittsburgh, he was like under the weather or something. If you watch that Hard Knocks, he was like on the sidelines, like coughing it up, man. It was just, he was not at 100%, let's say. So Cleveland, they got issues, man. They got some issues all over the place. So no thanks there. Tennessee is playing my Colts here, which, I mean, I don't even know which order I'm going to go in because I started going in this order. And now I'm going out of order here. Should I go Lions, Bears instead? I don't even know, man. Tennessee and Colts, though, I don't care about this game, even though I know it is the Colts, my team that I root for. But, I mean, Colts are basically dead. They're dead to me. I mean, are they going to show up and win this game? Maybe. But this is a game where Tennessee already lost at home to the Colts. So does that mean Tennessee is going to want to try to get some in-season road revenge here? Maybe. But Tennessee, as I said, they also pulled Will Levis. So it's going to be Mason Rudolph again in this game. And is that an upgrade or downgrade? Who even knows, really? Because Will Levis, I think, is actually probably the more talented of the two quarterbacks. He's basically their Jameis Winston. No, he's nowhere near as good as Jameis Winston, but he comes in, he has a better arm, but he makes a lot of mistakes. So that's what you're going to get out of Will Levis. Winston Levis. So I don't know, but it's going to be Mason Rudolph in this game for Tennessee. So maybe he will limit the mistakes. Tennessee does have a pretty solid defense at the very least, but Indianapolis, I mean, they're also teetering on being completely eliminated. So, but that doesn't mean the pressure is on for Indy, because if they don't win this game, they are going to be completely eliminated, and their chances of making the playoffs are extremely slim as it is. But it is certainly a winnable game for the Colts at the very least. They're down from 4 to 3.5. They got 57% of tickets, but 72% of the cash on the Colts. What do I want to do with this game? Absolutely nothing. I don't want to touch it. But I figured, I would just point out some information about each one of these games. At the very least, I don't even necessarily know if I want to give opinions on many of these games. I do have an opinion on the Ravens side, like I said. Giants and Atlanta. I mean, this is a weird one too, man. I mean, the Giants, they've packed it in. I'm pretty sure they're dead. I don't know if they're necessarily tanking to try to get a number one draft pick and try to get a quarterback, even though I don't really like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, man. In my opinion, I don't even know if either of those guys are going to turn out to be good. But the Giants, I mean, we know they have not done much of anything right at this point. They're rolling Drew Lock out there again. This offense has just been really, really a nightmare for the Giants. Their defense has been okay, but I mean, is that even going to be enough? I mean, they're getting a lot of points in this game, but I don't even know, man. Atlanta, I mean, obviously we know they're playing to try to get into the playoffs still, because they can get in if they win their division. So they're in this battle here. They got to keep winning these games. So Atlanta obviously does have reason to show up here. They are in a short week because they played on Monday night, but they did not look good in beating the Raiders, only beating them by 6, only putting up 15 points in just a horrendously ugly game that hopefully nobody even watched. I didn't watch it. So, I mean, that game was just terrible looking. So Atlanta, I mean, they look horrible. So a public bettor is probably not going to really want to come in and lay massive amounts of points with this Falcons team. It's just been awful, even though the Giants are really, really bad. It does look like the Falcons, I guess, are a little bit public, though. They're sitting in a 9-point favorite. They were at a 10-point favorite at one point. They got 75% of the tickets and 87% of the cash. It looks like it's on the Falcons. I mean, the Falcons are one of these two teams that does have something to play for, but they don't need to win by margin here. They just need to get a win. So I don't know. I mean, they're not going to really necessarily be trying to cover this large spread. The other thing about the Falcons, the reason the line dropped, although it only dropped 1 point from 10 to 9, is that for some reason the Falcons are deciding to bench Kirk Cousins, even though he's an experienced quarterback. He's played in the playoffs before. So, when we're trying to make a run to try to win the division, let's bench Kirk Cousins and replace him with rookie Michael Penix Jr. That's what the Falcons are doing in this game. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because Kirk Cousins has been making way too many mistakes over the last few weeks. I don't know what the deal is here. I mean, their offense certainly hasn't been good, so they're looking to shake something up here. Penix is going to be the starter in this game. Michael Penix Jr., Penix. Penix, however you want to pronounce that thing. No idea. No idea what we're gonna get out of him. He was the quarterback they drafted out of Washington, so he did play in a high pressure situation, I guess, playing in the playoffs and in the college championship last year. So maybe the pressure won't really get to him, even though this is an NFL game. They are trying to make the playoffs here, so I don't know. I mean, this is a big time question mark, man. Do I want to come in and try to lay almost 10 points with a rookie quarterback in his first game in the NFL? No, I do not. But I do not want to come in and try to play the Giants in this one either, man, with nothing to play for and maybe even being in tank mode. So no thanks on this game. Yeah, that's true. Penix, he doesn't really run the ball that much, right? He's more of a pocket passer. Yeah, so I don't know. When your name is Penix, you should be a DP quarterback. You should be running naked bootlegs, man. But no, I mean, you're right. I believe he is mostly a pocket passer there. But I mean, the Falcons do actually have an okay rushing attack, I think. I mean, they got Bijan Robinson there. I mean, he's a pretty talented running back, so who knows? But I mean, that is a game that I'm not going to even come close to touching that game. Detroit and Chicago. This game could be a little interesting, man. We got Detroit. This line looks very, very easy to lay the points with Detroit, man. It was at 7, and it's even below 7 now, even though it's with juice. So it's mostly at 7, but teetering on kind of 6.5 with juice there. I mean, man, the books are basically just asking you to lay only a touchdown with the Lions against this Bears team that hasn't won in who knows how long. So the public is only going to come in on the Detroit Lions in this one, man. 92% of the tickets, 97% of the cash. Lions, very public. And I'm not going to come in and try to lay points on the road with the Lions, man. I mean, this is a difficult spot. They just had a barn burner of a game against Buffalo, where Buffalo was actually blowing them out in Detroit, and Detroit made a huge comeback and almost was able to get back into the game. Huge effort game for Detroit, and that was coming off multiple division games in a row, including the game on Thanksgiving, where I know that was against Chicago. I know Chicago played them to a close final score, but Detroit really did dominate a lot of that game. I mean, Chicago only had 2 first downs in the first half in that game. There's no way that game should have been anywhere near that close. Detroit was dominating that game. So I could see Detroit taking that both ways. They could either say, well, we destroyed Chicago. Like, we just let them get back into the game. We shouldn't have done that. Or maybe they'll actually think, well, this game was actually close. Maybe we do need to show up against Chicago. I don't know which way this is going to go, man, because Detroit does, I mean, they're potentially in danger of losing this division, even though they did beat Minnesota at Minnesota already. They got Minnesota up in the very last week of the season, but they got to keep winning so that they make sure they stay ahead of Minnesota. So they can't really necessarily afford to drop these games here. But man, that is a big effort game they're coming off of. They have to go out on the road. They have to play outside, which they don't do that often. How many times have they played outside this year, man? I mean, they've played outside. Basically once this entire season they played outside, and it was that bad weather game at Green Bay, which, yes, they did win. But Detroit, I mean, even though they play in Detroit, they play all these games in roofed stadiums, man. And now they have to play outside in a 31-degree temperature here. Might not be that easy for Detroit, man, to do that. And playing cold weather, they're not really used to doing that. So I don't know, man. And they got San Francisco and Minnesota to finish the year, which they could consider those to be bigger games, maybe. So, I mean, think about that what you will. But, man, I mean, this game, I mean, it looks like this could be a game where Detroit might essentially lose the Buffalo game twice and be kind of hung over after that Buffalo game. So I would actually lean to Chicago plus the points here, man. And again, the odds makers, I mean, it looks too easy to lay the points with Detroit in this one. Chicago, at the very least, you can say they've played very tough against division opponents, even though 2 of those 3 games are at home. But they played Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit tough in those, though they did lose more badly on Monday night at Minnesota. But that's what they're coming off of now. So Chicago has just looked really bad 2 weeks in a row against the 49ers and Minnesota, and they're on a short week here. But, man, I mean, the nation saw that game, basically. If you play really bad on Monday night, you tend to want to bounce back from that, man. So Chicago, because it is Detroit and because they're coming off an ugly loss on a national stage, I do think Chicago is going to try to win this game, and they are going to try to show up in this game. Chicago, at the very least, they have an okay defense, so their defense can kind of keep them in games like this. In Detroit, they could be starting to have these injuries start to get to them, man. I mean, Detroit is the most injured team in the NFL, and these injuries are going to start to catch up to them at some point, man. I mean, they lost Aiden Hutchinson for the season a while back. They've been without Anzalone for a while now, so some of their best defensive players are out. Now they're without David Montgomery, so that kind of change of pace back there is out. Montgomery was more of their power rusher, so he's out, even though Gibbs can handle the workload. I mean, Gibbs is an okay power rusher as well, but Montgomery is just a bigger running back, man. So he adds that added dimension. Gibbs is still more of a speed, like pass catching running back, even though he can do everything, and he's going to have to basically because Gibbs is going to be their guy now. So Montgomery is out as well. So these injuries are really piling up for Detroit here, man. So I don't know, man, but I would certainly not lay the points to the Lions in this one. My lean in this one would be to take the points with the Chicago Bears. I'm not going to quite get there with this one, but I do like that side. And you're at least getting a decent defense, getting a lot of points at home. And the Lions, I mean, they were laying 10 and a half on Thanksgiving, and that would indicate that this line, I mean, should probably be a little bit lower than 7, really, if you factor in the swing to the other home field. So it looks like the line is actually a little bit high, even though I think to the public eye, it looks like kind of easy. Like, oh, the Lions only need to win by a touchdown. The Lions blow everybody out, basically. Like, yeah, they lost to the Bears, but the public is going to give the Lions a pass, or lost to the Bills, excuse me. Oh, or am I foreshadowing something? The public will give the Lions a pass for that Bears loss. I keep saying it, for that Bills loss, man, because they know the Bills are one of the best teams in the NFL, and that was a 48-42 final score. So if you're going to lose a game, you really can't possibly lose it while looking any better than that, right? Like that was like looking really good in a loss. So the public is not going to hold that against the Lions at all. So that's kind of the way I look at that. The lean would be to take the points with Chicago. I did not bet anything in women's basketball. Is that what that is? I don't touch that. Not at all. Missouri State and Southern Miss. I have no idea, man. I don't know anything about that. I think Missouri State's a decent women's basketball program, but that's basically all I know about that. No clue. Don't touch the stuff. It's like a drug, man. It's bad for me. I won't touch it. All right, next up, we get to talk about a play that I actually have. How about that? Because I'm just kind of going in order here, trying to get this done. You guys are going to hate both of my plays right here, by the way. I mean, they're both real horrendous. And I think I probably said I was never going to bet on this team again after they let me down against the Seattle Seahawks, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to bet the New York Jets yet again, even though I know this is going to be the 5th time I've bet the Jets, and they're 1-3 in the first 4 games that I've bet them. Excuse me. I don't even care. I'm going to take the Jets +3 in this one. This looks way too easy to take the Rams. Terrible spot for the Rams as well, which I'll explain in a minute. Rams are just sitting at 3. It might have been 3.5 at some point, but it's mostly just been 3 all week. 85% of tickets, 85% of the cash. The public, the public is only going to come in on the Rams. I mean, everybody loves to shit on Aaron Rodgers. It's basically a mainstream, it's like a corporate media narrative that we must shit on Aaron Rodgers. I know he just had a Netflix documentary come out, which I'm going to watch soon probably, and hopefully it's more positive towards Rodgers because, I love Aaron Rodgers, man. I just love him more with his, anti-COVID regime stuff, anti-vaccine stuff, and the corporate media narrative is you have to hate this guy because of this. Everybody's got to hate Aaron Rodgers because he's a free thinker. He thinks for himself. So no, that means not only do you have to hate him, but you have to gaslight everybody into saying he's a bad quarterback. And he really isn't. I mean, I tweeted this out. I mean, he's 41 years old and he still has a 23-8 touchdown to reception ratio this year. He's closing in on 3,500 passing yards. He'll surpass that in the remainder of the games unless he gets hurt. He has not been that bad at all this year, especially for a 41-year-old. So it's crazy. It's all gaslighting. And he's still averaging almost 7 yards per pass or something like that. So it's his numbers, I mean, yeah, they're a little bit down from what his career numbers are. He's not prime Aaron Rodgers anymore, but I mean, he's certainly not bad, especially for a 41-year-old quarterback. But because the Jets have been playing so bad, the narrative is Rodgers must suck, but that's not what it is, man. I mean, the Jets, they just haven't been able to coalesce. Their defense and their rushing attack have not been as expected. But in this game, I'm going to play the Jets, man. The Rams, I think they're in an awful spot here. I mean, the Rams are sitting tied for the lead in their division right now. And obviously, the division is what they're focused on. They got to win the division and they'll be in the playoffs. They could potentially get a wild card as well. But look at what they're coming off of, man. They beat Buffalo in the game where I took the Rams in that game. It was a bad spot for Buffalo. Buffalo was in a sandwich spot in that game. Coming off a huge win over the Chiefs and then a big Sunday night, I guess, bashing of San Francisco in the snow. Then the Bills had to go out to the Rams, and the Bills had to go out play at the Pacific Coast, and then the Bills are going to have another big game after that against the Detroit Lions. So I thought it was a really bad spot for Buffalo. Rams are able to get that win in it. Total barn burner, 44-42. Rams almost blew the game there, but they held on. They won the game. Huge win, and then they turned around, had to play on Thursday night, and they beat the San Francisco 49ers as well. So a huge win there too. Big divisional win against the San Francisco 49ers to complete a season sweep of the 49ers. And I thought that was going to be a bad spot for them, man. Like, how do you turn around on a quick turnaround time like that and win again after that game against Buffalo? I had San Francisco in this game. I got caught in that game. It was bad. Excuse me. I don't know how Brock Purdy comes into that game against this pretty bad Rams defense and just completely shits the bed like that. And I know San Francisco has a ton of injuries, but even so, if you're even a halfway decent quarterback, you don't get held to 6 points by the LA Rams, man. So I don't know what that was. That was a terrible performance from San Francisco. It was a big win for the Rams, and now the Rams have to play a second straight road game, even though, I know they have extra time off, but you have extra time off after you win a bunch of games in a row and you win a couple of big games in a row. Like I say, that extra time off doesn't really help you because what do you use that time off to do? You have nothing to fix. So that extra time off, you're just kind of like feeling good about yourself, and it can like kind of slow down that momentum that you have a little bit. They have to go out to the East Coast, early start time game, although I know it's not that early. It'll be 10 a.m. Pacific Coast time. It's still early start time. I mean, like I say, the later start times, like an East Coast team going west for a late start time is worse than a West Coast team going east for an early one, but it's still not that great. And it's an out-of-conference road game against a bad Jets team, a team that just has a bad record. Like, do the Rams have any reason to show up in this game? No, not really, because who do they have left coming up after this? They play the Arizona Cardinals and then the Seattle Seahawks. And I think the Cardinals game is a primetime Saturday night game next week on NFL Network, it says. So that's an even bigger game, too, because it's primetime. But these are the two teams they're battling with for the division here, Arizona and Seattle. Those are the games they need to win. This Jets game doesn't matter at all. The Rams need to win their division. A game against the Jets is going to matter the least out of the remaining games here at the very least. So Rams, they just need to show up and take care of business against division foes, man. This is a bad spot. So I like the Jets for all those reasons. You're getting points. I still don't think the Jets defense is really actually that bad. And you know that I keep saying the Rams defense isn't good. So I mean, the Jets, you're getting the better defense still with the Jets at home in the better spot. And the Jets, they had a big loss streak here, 4 straight losses. But what did they do last week? Even though they were in a bad spot, I thought, because they just played Miami to overtime. So the Jets were a big underdog at Miami, and they were trying to kind of play spoiler against the division rival Miami. And the Jets played really tough in that game, and they came off of that, and they actually showed up again and won a game, even though it was against a bad Jacksonville team. I know it doesn't look like their defense did that great in that game, but that shows me something that coming off of that Miami game, you think the Jets have no reason to show up anymore. And I thought the Jaguars would cover that number being an underdog like that, but the Jets actually were able to pull it out with a win, even though I think they did it like late in the game with a late score, but still the Jets showed up. So that tells me this Jets team has not totally given up yet. Even though, sure, they might be focused more on Buffalo and Miami to finish the season because those are their division foes there. But with the Rams coming in, Jets, I mean, they've been a laughing stock this year, man. So I just think the Jets are kind of playing for pride. I think they don't want to get embarrassed. I mean, what reason do they have to show up against the Jaguars? They didn't have any reason to show up, especially off of that tough performance against Miami. They had no reason to show up against Jacksonville, and they still did. So that tells me maybe they'll show up against the Rams as well. And like I said, the Rams defense is certainly vulnerable. And if you have a Jets offense that's kind of been struggling at certain points throughout the season. I mean, what better recipe is there for that than facing a defense that isn't very good in a bad spot? Yeah, so I do think that Aaron Rodgers and this Jets defense should be able to do something in this game against the Rams here. And here you go again, man, with the corporate media or fucking ESPN or whatever, whoever Graziano is. Aaron Rodgers is a con artist now. Yeah, okay, whatever. It's just going way too far, man. For all those reasons, and because I love Aaron Rodgers, give me the Jets one more time, man. Get me to 2-3 at least. Get me the outright win at least with the Jets this time, and let's have a good day going into the holidays, man. Give me the Jets for all those reasons. I mean, man, I like Aaron Rodgers, and because he's on the team, it makes me like the Jets. But I honestly don't even think I'm factoring bias into these plays that I'm making on the Jets, man. I just legitimately think these are correct spots to play them. Oh, and by the way, I did forget. I should mention that next week we do have Christmas Day games. So that's the other thing that you got to pay attention to. Like, are there going to be any look aheads here to these Christmas Day games? But that probably all gets thrown out the window because who's playing in the Christmas Day games? Oh, yeah, it's all the teams that are playing tomorrow on Saturday. Kansas City, Houston, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. All 4 teams that are playing tomorrow, they're all the teams that are playing on Christmas. It basically has to be that way, right? Because you can't play on Sunday and then turn around and play on Wednesday. So the only way they could do this is you either have the Thursday teams from this week come and play on Wednesday, or they had to have the Saturday teams play on Wednesday. So it's basically like going from Sunday to Thursday. So that's the way it had to set up. So there's not going to be any advantage as far as like the look aheads to the Christmas game. The Christmas games, I mean, they're going to be big games because they're on Christmas. They're isolated. And by the way, they're on Netflix this year, which is just completely ridiculous. But because all 4 teams that are playing in those games are all playing each other tomorrow, there's no advantage one way or the other. So, like, if any team is going to be looking ahead to the Christmas Day games, every one of these teams is going to be looking ahead to the Christmas Day games. So it's not really going to be a factor. And if it is going to be a factor, it could only really possibly be a factor for Kansas City, really, to be honest, because Houston's going to show up because it's against Kansas City. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, obviously, that's a massive game. They're going to show up. Kansas City, I mean, they may debatably have some reasons they wouldn't totally show up against Houston, and maybe they'd be looking ahead to the game, which I think is against the Steelers on Christmas. I don't know, man. So we'll see what happens. Next up on the slate here is Philadelphia at Washington. Man, I'm going to go an hour and a half again. Hopefully I don't, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm getting through these. Last week I went an hour and a half on this show talking about all 16 games, and my leans weren't even that great, really. I think I should have won both of my bets, and only one of the 2 came through. Eagles at Washington. Eagles up from 3 to 3.5. 73% of tickets, 77% of the cash. So the money actually kind of looks like it's slightly coming in on the Eagles, but I'm not sure that come Sunday we're going to see the market really look like that. I think Philadelphia is going to be a public road favorite, man. It looks way too easy to lay the points with Philadelphia. I mean, what public bettor is going to come in and play Washington in this game? I know Washington, they've been hyped a little bit this year. They got Jaden Daniels. I mean, they're not really a team that the public necessarily doesn't want to play on, but the public definitely wants to play on the Eagles because they keep winning. I mean, the Eagles haven't lost since week 4 against Tampa Bay. So, like, you think the public is really going to come in and try to jump in front of a moving train here, especially after the Eagles won their cross-state rivalry game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is also physical defense. That's a pretty big rivalry, especially for Philadelphia. That was a big win for them. It was a physical defensive game. Do you really think coming off that and going down to Washington that Philadelphia is going to be totally focused? But also off of that Pittsburgh game, do you really think that the public is not going to want to play Philadelphia again? I mean, I think they will. The public was actually not on Philadelphia last week, which is why I like Philadelphia, because Philadelphia was actually an anti-public home favorite in that game against the Steelers. So I didn't mind the Philadelphia side at all in that game. And it got there. But now I think maybe is the spot where you fade Philadelphia, man. I think it looks too easy to lay the points of Philadelphia at this point in this one. I know Philadelphia beat Washington on this Thursday night game. I know I liked Philadelphia to win and cover that game, and they did, but they were losing that game 10-6 in like the 4th quarter, man. A lot of points came in at the end of that game. Philadelphia actually scored, I think, 20 unanswered points in the game. And then Washington scored 8 in like garbage time to try to get themselves back in the game. But that was just a crazy fourth quarter, man. The game was a close, weird, low-scoring game prior to that. Washington could certainly play with Philadelphia here. Philadelphia coming off that big physical game against the Steelers, having already beaten Washington once. Philadelphia basically has the division wrapped up. I don't think they've technically clinched it yet, but they're pretty much not going to lose. Even if they lose to Washington here, they're really not in danger of losing. I mean, what, you think they're going to lose to the Giants at home? If it comes to that, probably not. I don't think they're going to lose to Dallas at home either, really. But yeah, so Philadelphia, I mean, this game isn't as important to them. I think it means a little bit more to Washington. Washington, I mean, they would like to beat the team that's ahead of them in their division, man. Washington, they're still fighting for a wild card spot, man. So Washington still has something to play for here more than what Philadelphia does. Philadelphia has already clinched a playoff spot at the very least. Washington's still fighting to get in, so you're going to see some fight from Washington, in my opinion, here. And Washington is coming off that game with that weird clock situation at the end of that game where they almost gave up. They almost lost to New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans was given the benefit of that weird situation where the clock didn't continue running or whatever. So New Orleans got a chance. They got into the end zone, and they actually went for 2, I think, to try to win the game at the very end, and they failed to get it. But, man, that clock stoppage, it shouldn't have happened or whatever, probably killed some teasers at the very least. And if New Orleans won, it would have killed probably a bunch of early money line parlays there, because the other like big favorites, public favorites, won in the 1 p.m. slate last Sunday. I made a tweet about this, like what the impact was by that weird officiating call, that bad call there. So I think mostly what it did is it wound up killing the teasers, because the teaser people basically needed Washington to win that game by 1.5, and that took that teaser away, which is just crazy. They knocked 7.5 down to 1.5. But Washington, I think because that was not a great effort from them, that was a close call at New Orleans. I expect Washington, they may have been looking ahead to this game against Philly. I mean, they were playing against a New Orleans team with a quarterback making his first NFL start. I mean, I think Washington didn't really expect to have a hard time in that game, really, even though it was on the road. I think they were looking ahead to this game against Philly, so I think Washington will show up in this game. So my lean would be to take the points with Washington in that one. We got Arizona at Carolina. Arizona, I mean, I think Arizona's probably not in the greatest spot here. I mean, the games that really matter for them, even though, yeah, they need to win conference games, but they got the Rams and then San Francisco to finish the season. So really they need to win those games because they're still trying to win this division. So this game against Carolina, I think probably means a little bit less. So it is possible they get caught going to Carolina here. And Carolina, I mean, they're still fighting at the very least, even though they did just get kind of blown out against Dallas, which I know it's the Dallas Cowboys, but Dallas, I think, was motivated by the fact that Carolina, who hadn't been a favorite in like 2 years, was actually a favorite over them. So I think that pissed off Dallas a little bit. So Dallas actually showed up. So I was wrong about that game. Dallas beat Carolina. But Carolina, I mean, because of that, Carolina might want to bounce back from that, man. I mean, this Carolina team, they seem to be playing for Bryce Young. They played a bunch of competitive games coming into that game against Dallas. Like, they played Kansas City, Tampa, and Philadelphia, all really tough. So maybe they started running out of steam a little bit in that game against Dallas. I don't know, but this could be a bounce back spot for Carolina here after kind of an ugly loss there, which we know that's not really the Dallas team that you're expected to lose to with Cooper Rush there and whatever. So that's a little bit more embarrassing because it was certainly not a full strength Dallas team, and it was at home. And this is the final home game of the season for Carolina here. So they may very well show up in this game for Bryce Young, for the fans, try to give them something to cheer for. So I would only lean to the Carolina side in that one. I'm not going to play it, but Cardinals are up from 3.5 to 4.5. They are public, 76% of tickets, but 83% of cash, it looks like right now. But my lean in that one would be to the Carolina Panthers plus the points. Next up is my other play. I told you you're going to hate these plays. Seattle Seahawks +3. Maybe you don't hate that one as much as the Jets. Maybe it's a little bit more tolerable, but I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one, man, plus the points. And I know I'm jumping in front of this Minnesota Vikings train. The Vikings haven't lost for a long time. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention the Chicago Bears, by the way. when I mentioned them playing at home against Detroit here, and I like their side a little bit. The Bears have played 3 straight games on the road, man. So the Bears have not been at home since that game against Minnesota. So some of what the Bears have been doing, stinking it up recently, they've been doing it all on the road. So the Bears at the very least get to come home for once. So, and this isn't one of those daily sports where the return home spot is a distracted spot. I mean, it's Bears hosting the Lions. I mean, they're not going to be distracted there. But on the flip side of that, where the Bears have been on the road 3 straight weeks, Minnesota has been at home for 3 straight weeks, and now they have to go out on the road, and they're not used to that, man. So Minnesota, they're on a short week. They're coming off a division game against Chicago, and they got to go out to the Pacific Coast to play a Seattle team that has kind of been mediocre. I mean, Seattle looks like they might win their division and get into the playoffs, possibly, but still, I mean, if you're Minnesota, you have bigger things to worry about, man. You have bigger fish to fry. And I know Minnesota, just like I said with Detroit, they're both trying to win games to try to win the NFC North. But I mean, Minnesota, I mean, they played Detroit the final week of the season, so that's really going to determine a lot. So even if Minnesota's 1 game behind coming into that game, there's the possibility that if they just beat Detroit and get even with them 1-1, that they may have the tiebreaker at that point. So we'll see what happens with that. This looks like a bad spot, man, for Minnesota. And before they play Detroit, next week they have to face Green Bay. That's another huge game because Green Bay's right behind them in the division, man. So with all division games surrounding this game against Seattle, I think they might look past Seattle here, man. So I'm going to come in and grab the points with Seattle. And for Seattle, everybody saw them lose on Sunday night badly to the Green Bay Packers, man. They got blown out on a national stage, so that doesn't look good at all for Seattle. So Seattle's coming off an embarrassing primetime loss. And when that happens, the team usually tries to bounce back from that, man. And not only that, but this is going to be their final home game of the season. So they are going to want to get this win. They're going to want to play hard for the fans here, their final home game of the season. So for all those reasons, I like Seattle. Excuse me. Minnesota, on the other hand, they looked really good on the national stage on Monday night, blowing out Detroit. So Minnesota's on the short week. They're the team that looked good on the national stage. Seattle looked terrible on the national stage. And not only that, but Seattle lost Geno Smith in the game to injury, and they had to put in Sam Howell. So it looked like all week Sam Howell was probably going to be playing, but now that's not going to be the case. It looks like Geno Smith is practicing. Even though he may not be 100%, Geno Smith is going to play in this game. I don't know if that's necessarily great for Seattle because he's not really having a great season necessarily, although I'd still rather have him than Sam Howell in there. It looks like it is still going to be Geno Smith in this game, so I like that too. The Vikings have flipped from a 1.5-point favorite to a 3-point favorite, and I think that move was because of the quarterback situation, because Geno Smith was injured, I think is why that line moved, and it hasn't come back down. So that's kind of crazy to me that it looks like Geno Smith is definitely playing this week, and the line hasn't moved back down towards the Seahawks, which is just weird to me. So, I mean, whatever. I'll take the extra value. If you're giving me 3, I'll take the 3. 81% of tickets, 77% of cash on the Vikings. The Vikings are certainly public, man, but I think the Vikings are maybe not quite as good as they look. I've been saying that for a while now. I mean, they've been a decently balanced team. They got a lot of weapons on offense. They got a decent defense, but man, I mean, I just think Sam Darnold, I think he's playing out of his depth at this point. He's not used to playing a full NFL season like this for the most part, I don't think. I think you might see him start kind of fading a little bit, and we may be seeing that a little bit here. We're seeing some more mistakes out of Darnold. He had a few games where he didn't really play that well. So, I mean, for all those reasons, man, give me the Seahawks plus the points in that one. And that is my other play there. I know you guys might not like that. Nice tower going on there, guys. Thank you. Tom, how dare you ruin the tower, man. Tom, John, Jack, thanks for the tower. All right. I'm losing my voice. I haven't had no voice for like weeks. I hate it. I just don't even know what's going on. I don't know if it's because of me just continuously talking or what the deal is. But, I mean, I've been doing this show for over a year, and I didn't have this issue, so I don't know what the deal is. I've run out of water too. Maybe I have to go get some water. I'm almost done here though. We got what else do we have left here? New England and Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo, we know Buffalo's coming off that huge win over Detroit, man. I mean, Buffalo bounced back. Buffalo's coming off so many ridiculous games in a row here, man. Beating Kansas City, huge win. And then I know they had a bye after that. They came out of it. They crushed San Francisco in the snow on Sunday night. They went out to the Pacific Coast, lost in a game where they really tried to come back, and they tried to beat my bet on the Rams there. Still wound up losing that game, but still a huge effort game at the very least. And then they had a huge effort in what everybody was hailing as a Super Bowl preview, another crazy high-scoring game against Detroit. Just absolutely crazy. And now they have to come in and play New England, and Buffalo has a massive lead in the division. I mean, they clinched the division 2 weeks ago. I mean, they were going to be in the playoffs. It's just a matter of how hard are they playing to try to get the 1 seed here. Who knows, really? They are still playing for the 1 seed, but is that big of a motivator? I don't know, man. When you're coming off that many big games in a row and you've been scoring that many points, the public is only going to come in on Buffalo in this one. And I do not agree with it. I mean, I would look to only take the points with New England in this one, even though it sounds ridiculous. Buffalo's up from 13.5 to 14. So it's going through that 2 touchdown threshold. They're public, of course, with 90% of tickets, 96% of the cash. Nobody wants anything to do with New England here. I mean, New England, even with Drake May in there, New England just hasn't been playing that well. But I mean, they've been, I guess, semi-competitive in some of these games. But if New England is going to show up for some of these remaining games here, the games are going to be these divisional games against Buffalo, man. They haven't faced Buffalo yet this season. So I think New England will show up and try to play in this game at the very least. And with a Buffalo team that might just be in kind of like, we got to get in and get out mode. Because if you're Buffalo at this one, you also don't want to get any of your star players hurt. So that's another aspect of this game where Buffalo might go pretty vanilla in this game. And you're asking them, after all those huge games in a row with not a whole lot left to play for, you're asking them to lay 2 touchdowns against a division foe who's probably going to show up and try to not really spoil the party, because I don't really have a party to spoil, but try to get a win here. Yeah, I mean, I lean to the Patriots in that one. I'm not going to play it, but yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, get something to quench my thirst. Maybe I will. I'm fine, Tom. I'll talk about Raiders, Jags. I'm going to talk about every one of these games. Yeah, I'm going to chug hot sauce, fix my voice, man. Buffalo might win the Super Bowl. I mean, a lot of people are saying that, but actually, I've heard that that would actually be a better outcome for some of the sports books. The sports books actually have more liability on most of the other Super Bowl contending teams than Buffalo. So actually, Buffalo winning would actually not be that bad for them. It seems like some of the professional bettors are kind of off of the Buffalo train there. What else we got left for the games here? Yeah, you want Jags, Raiders here? I mean, this game is absolute shit. I mean, what do you want me to say about this? The Jags are public, 73% of tickets, 78% of the cash. I don't get it. Raiders have actually moved to a favorite, from a 1-point favorite to a 2-point favorite with juice. So it looks like there is actually maybe some money coming in on the Raiders side. However ridiculous that sounds, I mean, the public is not playing Jacksonville here, man. If the public is coming in and they're playing the Jacksonville side, it's not because they want money on Jacksonville. It's because they don't want anything to do with the Raiders. That's why. I mean, based on public perception, I mean, the Raiders are the uglier of these two teams, but Jacksonville, I mean, Jacksonville's certainly ugly as well, and they're having to go to the Pacific Coast here. Well, the Pacific time zone, at least, to Las Vegas. I mean, with Mac Jones as quarterback, I mean, it looks pretty bad for Jacksonville, to be honest here. So I'm not sure I would disagree with the Raiders here. I mean, the Raiders, whether they're are they tanking? You know, I don't know if the Raiders are tanking or not necessarily, man, to try to get that number 1 draft pick. I mean, the Raiders, they're going to be playing Aiden O'Connell in this game. He's been dealing with injuries. I'm pretty sure he's playing. And for the Raiders, even though it's a short week, the Raiders played on Monday night, but the Raiders looked awful on Monday night. They only put up 9 points against the Atlanta Falcons, and I think they might have been losing 15-0 for some of that game. I think they might have had no points for a lot of that game. I don't even remember. Maybe that wasn't the case, but man, I mean, if you're coming off only putting up 9 points on Monday night, you're probably going to try to show up in your next game. So I think that the Raiders are coming off the much more embarrassing performance. So, excuse me, if you forced me to lean in that one, I would lean to the Raiders. in that one, yeah, this is the toilet game of the year there. I mean, it is the type of game where maybe you want to look to try to play a total. And it looks like even though the total has gone up from 39.5 to 41, we see 62% of the tickets are on the over and 92% of the cash on the under. I don't know, man, because when you have two bad teams, it means their offenses and defenses all suck. So it's like, which way is it going to go? And if teams don't care that much, they won't play intense defense. But then it's a matter of like, are the offenses good enough to put up this amount of points? I don't know, man. So I don't know what I think about the total there. But as far as the market read, it does look like a lot of the cash is coming in on the under versus the tickets actually coming in on the over. So take from that what you will. The market read may or may not look like the the money is coming in towards the under. I don't know, man. Yeah, O'Connell, he's not very good. He's got the stash, man. That's why people like him. He's trying to look like Gardner Minshew and have the stash. I agree. He's not good. He's not the guy. The Raiders have a lot of problems. Then we got what may be the disappointment bowl here, San Francisco and Miami, because whichever team loses this game, I think is basically dead. These teams are like barely holding on to playoff hope at this point. I think whoever loses this game is probably going to be out. 49ers have flipped from a 1.5 point dog to a pick 'em, going towards being a favorite on the road. 50% of the tickets evenly split, 73% of the cash on the 49ers. So it looks like the money is coming in this massively injured 49ers team. The 49ers just lost Garendo now too, so they're down to a fourth string running back, which is Patrick Johnson Jr., I think is his name, something like that. I have no idea who this guy is, but he is their running back now. No idea if he's going to be able to be effective at all. I mean, Miami's defense isn't very good, though. In San Francisco, the one good thing if you like San Francisco is that they just played a horrible game at home in front of a primetime audience on Thursday. So they have extra time off after playing a horrific primetime game where they only put up 6 points. So if anything's going to help them refocus after that, it's going to be getting the hell out of there and going on the road and just focusing on football here. So even though they do have Detroit up next, I mean, they can't afford to lose any game at this point. So I actually think you might see San Francisco actually be in a bounce back spot after playing such a horrible game and having extra rest here against Miami. Miami, I mean, they're coming off a tough game, man. I mean, playing Houston, Houston's defense is tough. So that was a pretty ugly game for Miami, man. Waddle got hurt in that game. It looks like he's not playing, which, by the way, affects my fantasy team. By the way, Waddle and Kamara are both going to be out. So I haven't talked about the Saints yet because that's Monday night. But, man, you're going to have these two guys, Waddle and Kamara for my fantasy team, both injured in the fantasy playoff semifinals. I mean, come on, man. I need those guys. I'm going to lose because of that. Anyway, Miami, they're coming off a game against a tougher defense, at the very least against Houston. That was a bigger, tougher game. So you get San Francisco. I mean, they're coming off a less physical game. They're coming off a way worse performance. And it was in front of a primetime audience, and they have extra time off. So the lean would be to the 49ers. I agree with the market in that one, but I'm not going to play it. You think O'Connell has a pedo stash? Yeah, I mean, he does have kind of a creepy stash. Been on the bigger, blacker team. That team is usually the more physical team. So, all right. And then we're down to the night games now, and then I'll be able to rest my voice. We're only going to go a little bit over an hour here, so that's good. Sunday night is Tampa Bay at Dallas. Sunday night game. Tampa Bay, I mean, they're fighting to get into the playoffs, man. I mean, they're trying to maintain the lead in their division here, so Tampa needs to keep showing up. I bet them last week, but man, they're coming off a nice-looking win where they beat the Chargers bad, and now they're playing a second straight road game. It doesn't look like the easiest spot to me for Tampa, man, to be honest. A second straight road game off of a nice blowout win like that, I mean, playing in Dallas, I mean, it's not exactly the easiest task. The question is Dallas trying to show up here? And it looks like Dallas is playing, man. I mean, they played pretty hard in that Monday night game against Cincinnati. They played well last week because they were like, we're underdogs against the Panthers. Come on. They went out there and they won against the Panthers. I know Dallas does have 2 division games left, but I mean, Dallas, as a team that's not going anywhere, when you're hosting a Sunday night game, I think you're still going to show up for that. And Dallas, they're trying to finally win a primetime game, man. I mean, Dallas has lost every primetime game this year, I'm pretty sure. They lost 2 Monday night games against Houston, bad, and then that last game against Cincinnati on that embarrassing blunder on the blocked punt where they blocked Cincinnati's punt. They were going to win the game, as I already mentioned tonight, and one of their rookies got in the way of the ball, touched the ball, blew the game for them. So to me, I mean, Dallas did bounce back from that, and I do think Dallas is going to want to finally not embarrass themselves in a primetime game. So I actually leaned to Dallas slightly in this game. Tampa Bay laying a bunch of points on the road. They're down from 4-4 with reduced juice. 79% of tickets, 83% of the cash. On the side of the Bucs. And the Bucs, they are the only team that really has something to play for here because they're trying to get into the playoffs. But man, I mean, laying points on the road in that situation, I don't think is the greatest idea, the greatest spot there. So I lean to taking the points with Dallas in that one. Yeah, the Red Rocket 2.0, he's getting erect and plump and gay. That's true. He is gay. He's probably gay. Or you think Aiden O'Connell might be gay. Maybe he's a gay pedo. Maybe he's both. Who knows? The Red Rocket 2.0, though, man. Cooper Rush. I mean, he hasn't been playing that bad. Since he's gotten going, he hasn't been that bad. And, I mean, the Bucs defense is really, the Bucs defense isn't really the greatest. So, oh, man. Can I finish this or am I going to have no voice left? From Monday night, Saints-Packers is Monday night. And, man, the Packers, they're up from 13.5 to 14, 83% of the tickets, 95% of the cash. But the Packers are going to be very public in this game. And I would only lean to fading the Packers here. Packers, I mean, look at what they're coming off of, man. They're coming off of beating Seattle badly on Sunday night. I mean, that was a huge primetime win. They looked really good in primetime, and they played a big primetime game the week before that, too, against Detroit. Barely lost that game. Now they have to play another primetime game against a bad New Orleans team, against a rookie quarterback who only has one start under his belt. And then up next, they have Minnesota. So this looks like a sandwich spot to me almost, man, for Green Bay. So I would only look to fade Green Bay in this one and take the points. I'm not doing it, but, man. I mean, this is a huge game coming up next against Minnesota, and they do Chicago to finish out the season. But that Minnesota game is a big game. So I would look to fade Green Bay in this one if I was going to play the side in this one, which I'm not going to. But the Saints, I mean, they're coming off almost beating Washington. So at least the Saints are at least playing out the stretch, and it looks like they're at least playing with effort here. And I think they're probably going to show up when they're going to Lambeau. But the problem is, as I mentioned, Alvin Kamara is not going to be playing in this game. Derek Carr is injured, as I said. They got whoever this rookie quarterback is that's in there now, Hayner or whatever. I forget what his name is. But, I mean, he at least has a start under his belt now. So at least his first start is out of the way. So he should be a little bit less nervous this time. But for the Saints, I mean, it is a dome team having to go up and play in the cold in Lambeau. So that's not really the greatest. So, I mean, I'll just avoid it. I'll just stay away because I don't know how the Saints are going to respond. Like, I don't really want to put my money on a rookie quarterback in his second start and Saints team that's not used to playing outside in the cold either. So I'll stay away from it, but it does look like a bad spot for Green Bay. And Green Bay might just kind of try to get in and get out here. Again, they're going to be in the playoffs. So just like I said with the Bills, similar situation here where Green Bay might really just kind of try to get in and get out and not get people hurt either. Whew. So that's it, man. I'll talk about it on the Monday night game again on Monday. I might rehash some of these games the next couple of days. I'll be back in the morning if I have a voice at all, man, to talk about college basketball and this whole card. Holy crap, man. There's a lot of stuff going on. So there's at least opportunity for me to try to win my money back here and try to get back on the winning side to finish the year. But I'm starting to sound like RFK Jr. here, man. I think I have a brain worm. My two plays this week, besides the under that I already lost on Thursday, I got the New York Jets +3, Seattle Seahawks +3. That's going to do it for me. Thank you, Jack. Thanks for hanging out. This was not a good show at all, man, because I don't have a voice. So what do you want from me? I got to rest my voice. Tower Gang Tone on Twitter and patreon.com/Tower Gang. And you can sign up, give us some support, and you get live pre-show, post-show for the most offensive podcast on the planet, man. You get to hang out with us in a Telegram as well. That's going to do it for me. Let me get some sleep and let me rest my voice. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. Peace out.